Welcome to Bloomers in the Garden. I'm Len Schroeder.
And I'm Julio Zamora.
On today's show, we have special guest Bobby Blue, Vice President of Centerton Nursery.
Centerton Nursery is one of the finest nurseries in the country. Truly a family-run operation, now in its third generation.
Bobby runs the nursery with his two siblings, Donald Blue, President, and Amy Ogden Blue, Vice President of Sales.
During our time together today, we'll discuss Centerton's colorful history and current operation.
Don't worry, there'll be plenty of talk about plants.
So stay tuned, and we'll be right back in the garden with Bobby Blue, Vice President of the Centerton Nursery, right after these messages. Bloomers in the Garden is brought to you each week by Bloomers Home and Garden Center. Bloomers is an award-winning garden center just 20 minutes from Philadelphia. Bloomers has been providing expert advice turning brown thumbs green for over 30 years. At Bloomers, we want you to ask us every question, even if you think it's silly. We share information in a friendly, non-judgmental way that is meant to teach and spread the joy of gardening. Visit Bloomers Home and Garden Center in Washington Township, Gloucester County. For directions, go to bloomers.com, and we'll see you in the garden.
Hi, this is Len Schroeder from Bloomers in the Garden. Do you have a landscape, garden, or plant question? If so, call or text us using the Bloomers in the Garden hotline. Dial 609-685-1880. That's 609-685-1880. Don't be shy. We want to hear from you. Call or text us and let us know what problems you're facing. Let us know how we're doing. Call or text 609-685-1880. If we use your comment on the air, we'll send you a free Bloomers t-shirt. Call or text us at 609-685-1880. That's 609-685-1880. And we'll see you in the garden.
Fertilome's Triple Action contains 70% neem oil and 0.25% pyrethrins as a concentrate and ready to spray. It is an insecticide, fungicide, and miticide labeled to use on vegetables, fruits, nuts, herbs, spices, and ornamentals. This organic OMRI-listed product controls a wide variety of insect pests and diseases, including aphids, scale, spider mites, whiteflies, rust, leaf spot, and powdery mildew. This insecticide is an all-in-one bottle that will cure just about any problem you may run into throughout the year. Fertilome's Triple Action has been helping gardeners across the country for years. Best to apply in late evening and early morning hours. Mix 1 ounce, which is equivalent to 2 tablespoons in a gallon of water. The best part is Triple Action may be used up to the day of harvest. So the next time you are visiting your favorite garden center, ask for Fertilome's Triple Action and expect to have the best-looking plants in the neighborhood.
You're listening to Bloomers in the Garden Radio. Listen anytime through your favorite podcast provider or see and hear us by subscribing to Bloomers YouTube channel. Bloomers in the Garden Radio is heard in Philadelphia and throughout the whole Delaware Valley every Saturday. First, wake up with us at 6 a.m. on WNWR The Word at 95.3 FM and 1540 AM. Tune in at 8 a.m. to Bloomers in the Garden Radio on Talk 860 WWDB. A rebroadcast of Bloomers in the Garden Radio is played each Saturday evening at 5 p.m. on The Word 95.3 FM and 1540 AM. On Sunday at 8 a.m., we can be heard throughout the New York Tri-State Area on Classic Oldies 1250 AM WMTR. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the garden. Welcome back to Bloomers in the Garden. Bobby, welcome to Bloomers in the Garden.
Well, thanks for having me.
Tell you, I've been told, get Bobby on.
Yeah.
So finally you're here.
Yay.
Centerton Nursery was founded by your grandfather, Ray Blue, and now it's run by you and your siblings in the third generation.
That is correct, yeah.
Big shoes to fill.
Huge. Huge.
Yeah, like your grandfather, I went through and I knew his engineering chops, all of the things that he did around the nursery, but it's the things that he didn't do at the nursery and did. Okay, cattle ranch in Ecuador.
Yeah, it's cattle ranch in Ecuador.
Is that still there?
The ranch is still there, yes.
Yeah.
We really don't have much to do with it anymore, but the ranch is definitely still there. there was go back to the late 60s. My dad was in high school. My aunt was in junior high, and he had gotten this opportunity to move to Ecuador to set up a mushroom growing facility down there. Because, and you can talk to all your mushroom growing guys around here, they hate it when it gets really hot like it is right now, or when it gets really cold. What you want is a very consistent temperature so that you can control your grow really well. Well, there's hillside caves in Ecuador where it's 68 degrees every day, all year long, never changes, no seasonality or anything. And so some mushroom growing guys had this idea of like, well, let's set up a mushroom growing facility down there. It'll be cheaper. The labor's cheaper. We can just can them and ship them down there. The only thing we have to do is set up the facility to can them. So he was told he had to be down there for at least 3 to 4 years, and he had just gotten stagnant in what he was doing. So he literally picked up his whole family, moved to Quito, Ecuador, and they lived down there for a number of years. And you got to understand, an American business person running a business down there, you know, he had dinners with the Minister of Agriculture, and he met the Vice President of the country, and, you know, it was a different time down there then. Yeah. And so he got to know people, and this ranch came up for sale, and it was, you know, pennies to the acre at that time. And so he bought it, just didn't know what he'd do with it. But we ran it. We basically sold enough cattle every year to keep the thing running. And that was it. It was just, he liked the land down there. He liked the people down there, and he just wanted a reason to go back.
Wow. And how many acres?
About 42,000.
Wow. My goodness.
You know, so it was quite a bit.
Quite a bit.
But you got it. Most of it's the side of a volcano, so which is most of the land down there. It's also very high. The base where the ranch house was built is just over 12,000 feet elevation. So it's not usable for much of anything except cattle.
Yeah, I had read in an article that he had said that it was that elevation and that cattle don't feed above 13,000.
Yeah.
Wow, that's cutting it close.
Not much grows above 13,000.
And mushroom growing facilities, so in Ecuador, but in two other countries?
Well, he was actually doing work he had done work in Venezuela and Costa Rica as well, and as well as right here in southeastern Pennsylvania. So he had gotten to that through he had been involved in the manure industry, which is not glamorous, but it's a real thing, which had led him to mushrooms. So, yeah.
I talk about my late wife where she went to school for fashion, and I took her away from all that so that she could sell cow manure and mulch. President of the Federal Reserve Bank for the Eastern Division.
Well, so, you know, I saw that on the sheet here, and it is true. Like, that is one thing he did. But, you know, my grandfather was a great teller of stories, and he loved telling stories about Ecuador and about, you know, flying into the jungle on a plane to meet with some like a native chief or this and that. He didn't have any good stories about the Federal Reserve Bank. So what I've come to believe is either he didn't like it, or it must have been the boringest few years of his entire life of what was a very exciting life. So we didn't really chat much about the whole banking stuff.
It's funny. In that same article, it talks about how he hated meetings. Like you and I briefly talked.
He's passed that on.
Oh yeah.
Yes. We definitely inherited that trait amongst others.
President of the Board of Agriculture for New Jersey.
Sure.
And he made it sure. Not the secretary, but the president. You always hear about the secretary of agriculture, but he was the boss of the secretary.
Zero interest in being the secretary.
And then, and then the founder of Centerton Nursery.
Yes. Yeah, that too.
And again, I've been buying product from Centerton for as long as we've been open. So we're 35 years, starting September 17th.
Well, Centerton started in business in 1975, so actually coming up on our 50th year, just about a year and a half out.
Wow. Yeah. And I've become close friends with one of your salespeople, Tim Bloxham, and Tim talks about the stories because he actually started working at the nursery about just the trimming machine. Like we put the guys on the trimming machine first, and if they can make that first day, they're going to last. You know,
that's right.
And that stuff that was made by your grandfather.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and you got to think about, when he started this, he really had put all his money into just buying the property. Okay. So he couldn't afford a lot of mechanization, but he knew that was the future. Even in the 70s and 80s, he knew that labor would only become more expensive, that plants would become harder and harder to grow. And so he knew that by mechanizing, he could help himself out. Mm-hmm. And So you can't go out and buy it. You can't borrow the money on it because you're already tapped out to buy the land. So you got to get creative. And that comes from being a farmer in the 40s and 50s.
That's right.
You had to do it all yourself.
That's right. That's right. So your grandfather, he never retired because he was always at the nursery.
Yep.
But your dad took over Denny.
Yeah.
And that after graduating, and Denny is probably who I associate most with the nursery, just because when we were buying lots of plants, Denny was there, and that I find him to be. Let me back up. Your grandfather is reincarnated in Donald.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. That
you see are the creative, high creative, and very similar to your dad, who was really creative. And I came across a grower's perspective on plants and profitability that he wrote quite a while ago. And I found it not only entertaining, well written, and it was something about profit margins on plants, but it didn't read that way. And that I find like that's something where it's needed at an operation, but it also sometimes is lost.
Well, it's about perspective. About you want to grow these beautiful things, but at the same time, you need to make money on them, or else you're not going to stay in business.
Right.
That's an issue that we find ourselves a lot in the independent side of our industry. Mm-hmm. And my dad had the forethought. He is a great creative writer. Mm-hmm. And wrote all the copy for the catalog and for our labels for a number of years until I took it over about 2 decades ago. Uh-huh. And every once in a while he would just need that creative outlet to sort of tell a story.
Yeah.
Better than that article that he wrote in the 90s. He used to have a big sign on the corner of our property, and it was large, like tall letters. They hand painted. He says, "This is a farm." And he started explaining, like, you may see sights or smells or sounds coming out of here that may be a little bit unorthodox for what you consider to be our neighborhood. But we spray fertilizer, we grow plants,
Mm-hmm.
we use, compost in our soil, which doesn't smell that good. And he just loved to tell it in a way that, almost you just couldn't not help but smile.
Yeah.
And just telling a story and saying, this is us and this is who we are and this is how we do the things that we do. And he does a better job of that than I ever will.
I'll tell you, it's I come from a family farm and garden that's in 5 miles from New York City. It was the farm to me. It was the farm.
Right.
It was the farm. I actually had a friend of mine who's from Sussex County. He came there. He goes, "This isn't a farm. This is a store." And it's like, I was insulted. It's like, no, this is a farm. And it's that same romanticism that Denny brought that we had so I know exactly what they're talking about. And now you are taking over 20 years ago, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So Donald, president, you vice president, and Amy, vice president of sales.
Mm-hmm.
And that that transition for me as a customer was like almost instant. I mean, that succession plan, whoever came up with it.
That was mostly Ray, mostly my grandfather.
Yeah.
It's weird when you're going off to college and you have discussions about what happens when people pass away in your family. But, part of that, and thankfully that didn't happen for 20 years after that point, but we had lots of conversations in terms of what made our company successful. Mm-hmm. The type of customers we wanted to have, the type of people we wanted to employ, the things we had to do to stay successful. We were taught this at a very young age, whether we were getting involved in the business or not. Because my sister sort of came in the side door. We had no idea that she wanted anything to do with it, and then she just something fell into her lap, and she just ran with it. Right. Exceeded all expectations. But she knew, because from a very young age, like this is the way we've been successful. Right. And by tweaking these few things, we can change with the times and build for a better future, grow the company, but still keep some sort of sense of success and a sense of self with our family.
That's awesome. I mean, it's there's another part of Centerton that not many people know about, and that's Blue Line Nursery.
Yeah.
Where it's basically you're growing starter plants.
Correct, yeah.
and that the roles are reversed between you and Donald. You're president, is that correct?
Or anybody that runs a family business, they know that the titles aren't worth the business cards are printed on.
No.
So it was literally decided that I'm the president, he's the vice president, just because it was opposite of the way it was in Centerton. Okay. Everything split down the middle between my brother and I for that, but it's a different type of business. We're selling younger plants. It's a different purchasing schedule, different growing schedule. Mm-hmm. And it was set up in the late 90s by my grandfather, again, who he said, if we're going to do this, we got to make sure it makes its own money. Because if it's not making money, then we should just pay other people to do it. So we set up separate payroll, separate office, separate everything. Mm-hmm. And as long as that's turned a profit, we'll keep it in business. Well, I mean, we're 20-some years in, almost 27 years in, it's still turning a profit. So, yeah.
Well, and that's key. Well, we've got to go to break, and when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about that family dynamic, and because it's important to me because I came from a family business, and that I don't want to inject my own story, but I will. We'll be right back right after this. Hi, this is Len Schroeder from Bloomers in the Garden. Do you have a landscape, garden, or plant question? If so, call or text us using the Bloomers in the Garden hotline. Dial 609-685-1880. That's 609-685-1880. Don't be shy. We want to hear from you. Call or text us and let us know what problems you're facing. Let us know how we're doing. Call or text 609-685-1880. If we use your comment on the air, we'll send you a free Bloomers t-shirt. Call or text us at 609-685-1880. That's 609-685-1880. And we'll see you in the garden.
Are you looking forward to a spring of vibrancy while using the best organically approved growing media for your annuals and vegetables? Coast of Maine's Sprout Island Organic Seed Starter has been created to set a diverse culture ideal for germinating seeds and root cuttings. Created using the best ancient composting techniques and new age mixing devices, Sprout Island Organic Seed Starter gently combines kelp meal, worm castings, mycorrhiza, perlite, and sustainably harvested peat moss, establishing the most desirable setting to enhance new plant growth. Coast of Maine's Sprout Island Organic Seed Starter is available at these local retailers, or visit www.coastofmaine.com to locate one near you.
Pickering Valley Feed and Farm, Exton, PA. Ashcombs Farm and Greenhouses, Mechanicsburg, PA. Sickles, Little Silver, New Jersey.
James, won't you turn that old iPad off and come on over here and listen to the radio with Pop-Pop? I'm sure we can find something to listen to.
Okay.
Let me see here.
It's going to be another scorcher out here today. It's those doggone days of summer with temperatures topping out in the high 90s.
God dog it, made me drop my doggone coffee.
Pop, what's the dog day?
Well, James, it's funny that you asked that question because every dog has its day. And the dog days of summer is a magical time at Bloomer's Home and Garden Center, where they've got the nerve, the unmitigated gall. You'll learn about those words a little bit later on, to slash prices all over the place. I'm talking crazy numbers here. $50 off all Ludgood Japanese maple trees. 50% off all shade trees, camellias and oak leaf hydrangeas. Even all their fruit trees are 50% off. That's not all their nursery has to offer. 75% off French lilac hybrids. 75% off snow sprite cedar, tricolor willow, and enoki cypress. Meet petite knockout roses for $15.99 each or 2 for $25. To wrap up the dog days of summer with these pawsome blowout deals. You see what I did there?
I guess that Bloomers, Pop, you're barking up the right tree.
You've been hanging around your pawpaw for too long. You're starting to sound just like me. I see what you did there, young man.
For more information, check out bloomers.com. You've got to see this place.
Welcome back to Bloomers in the Garden. We're here with Bobby Blue, Vice President of Centerton Nursery, and we're having a great time here. Working with your brother and sister must be filled with nostalgia, Bob. But do you have each your own distinctive areas of responsibility?
Yes. So, Len talked last segment about how my brother is basically my grandfather incarnate. I kind of lean a little bit towards the more softer creative side like my dad did. But the best way to run a family business is make sure that you all have your corners that you can back into and stay out of each other's hair. So there's three of us. I kind of picture us as a triangle, and my brother is in production, in greenhouse design, in the more engineering side of things. I kind of lean towards the copywriting, product development, brand development, taking care of all our labels, which is actually a huge chore in itself, taking care of our catalog on our website, which is a large chunk of our year. My sister, she's 100% in sales and figuring out how best to keep all of our customers happy and staying in charge of our sales team, which is 10 strong. And so because of that, we can, like I said, stay out of everybody's hair. Everybody's not staying in their lane so much, but make sure that everybody knows what their job is. And you get your job done, you don't have to worry about the other two getting theirs done. And at the same time, I'm not constantly looking over my siblings' shoulders saying, like, what are you doing? What are you doing? We try to meet every day. We call it our morning powwow. It usually lasts, sometimes it's 5 minutes, sometimes it's an hour and 50 minutes. But it's just a one way for us to just sort of get on the same page, saying, who's doing what, what's coming up, that sort of things. But we've seen it very recently, actually, in the last 20 years. Nurseries of our size or even larger that were run by families that fell apart, literally like two pieces, because somebody in the family could not get along. And so that's our model. Just don't do that. Whatever we can do to not become that, that's what we stick with.
Good.
Yeah.
It's working well.
Yeah, I mean, so far it's working well. I mean, we'll see.
From the outside looking in, it is working unbelievably well.
I appreciate that.
Because, again, I've seen
You want me to pull the curtain back?
Well, I'll tell you. In a little bit, yeah. I mean, everything is so professional. And it's the funniest thing. I went to Mant's show. It's Mid-Atlantic Nurseryman's Trade Show. This is years ago. And Amy either just came on or I don't remember. But the fact that she knew who I was a surprise. Yeah. It's like, oh, Len from Bloomers. It's like, yeah, who told you? And I'm looking for Tim. Did you whisper something? And that just knows her customers and knows, and it just basically, what do you want? I'll take care of whatever needs you have, or if there's an issue, we're going to extinguish it right away. And it's amazing to watch this. I'm going to call you the siblings, how you operate, because like you said, you do have your own lane and you do trust each other, and it's a beautiful thing. Anyway, but one of the things is the innovation. The product is a plant. And plants are confusing, and we have a thing that we talk about. We're bloomers. We don't want anybody to feel intimidated or to think that there's any stupid question. You answer so many of those questions with the way that you've created not only tags and things that go with your plants, but also categories of plants. Like the first thing that comes is hassle-free roses. Roses, everybody, roses are hard. I don't want roses. I have to just spray them, right? And you guys kind of take that out of it, and you've created product lines that are the same way. Can you address some of those that you?
Well, so the origin of hassle-free roses, you got to think back. This is over 20 years ago. This is before knockout rose existed.
Right.
Wow. Before anybody knew what a shrub rose was. They thought about a rose. They thought about that thing in their grandmother's garden. Right. It's 8 feet tall. 7.5 feet of that is defoliated, and then there's one flower at the top of a thorny branch. That was the thought of a rose in the 90s.
Right.
And we knew that people were breeding roses that were better for more humid environments. And so we started contacting a few rose breeders around and started linking up with some suppliers, and we said, send us everything. They said, oh, well, this won't grow for you. Send us everything. And so we trialed hundreds of varieties of roses in the 90s, and we threw away all but 2 or 3 of them. We'd say, send us more. And so we basically built this catalog of about 20 varieties that would work in the Mid-Atlantic. We have pressure from downy mildew, powdery mildew, circus borer, black spot, all of the main culprits that are going to take that rose and make it 7.5 feet defoliated. We've got them all here. So we found ones that just grew better. And when it came time to market these things, somebody said, well, these are going to be the most hassle-free roses you could get on the market. Oh, there it is.
Bingo.
Bingo.
There you got it.
And so that became a brand in and of itself. It's a way to package it for a consumer that's very intimidated about roses and saying, if you're going to be successful with a rose, it's going to be a hassle-free rose, flat out.
And hassle-free basically is a designation of a collection of roses.
Yes.
Not necessarily where they're brand new.
No, absolutely. No, I mean, one of our most popular ones is Sunspray. Sunspray, I believe, was bred in the 60s.
Yeah, that's
And
been
we're
around
not,
forever.
yeah, we're not breeding. We're not working with a specific breeder or specific supplier. It's whatever works for the consumer.
The knockout roses, to me, I went to botanical garden. I was going to go to the rose garden. Went to the rose garden. What did they have?
Knockouts.
Knockout roses. I was so disappointed because I still want to see Abraham Lincoln, Queen Elizabeth, Tropicana, all of those hard to grow roses.
Yeah.
But still, they can be, you have to have a spray program, which selfishly benefits our garden center industry. But also, it just is, they're a little bit different. Knockouts, we've had several shows on about where the viruses that knockout supposed to be resistant to are not.
Yeah, and I think that kind of changes with the time, with different pressures. You get different years. I mean, just look at spot and lanternfly. Right now, that it's moving in waves, and it's been around enough that they can see it moves in waves. And there's areas where it's still around, but not nearly as virulent as it was a few years ago. And then, like New York City, it's just inundated this year, whereas Philadelphia was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And diseases sort of do the same thing. But at the same time, 20-plus years on a plant, chances are it's not a genetic clone to the original one that was founded in the late 90s. So things do change.
Yeah, and that's it. It's the genetics.
Yeah.
Centerton primarily grows in a blue pot.
Correct.
And that they're known, and yes, their name is Blue, but it's spelled BLEW. But the pot is blue. And that the day, I'm fortunate where I'm fairly close to the nursery. So, I got to admit, Tim and I do a tour of the nursery, and we mostly talk about our kids. But there's always an order attached, though.
Yeah.
There's always an order attached. But when I saw the proven winter pots, where all of a sudden it's like, okay.
Yeah.
But some of the genetics for proven winners, and yes, they used to be called proven losers in the beginning, but now some of the genetics like Pugster Buddleia are incredible, incredible types of butterfly bush. But I remember Martha Stewart promoting, the lilac that they had. Their first run of the lilac, it was supposed to be an ever-blooming lilac, and it kind of wasn't.
Yeah.
But they came out with another version that was much better.
That's right.
So it must have been hard. Family pride, right?
Yeah, some of it was family pride. But on the flip side of it was we know that we were losing customers that wanted a bit more of a one-stop shop. You've got to be a little bit of everything to everyone, which is unfortunate because you got to think that some of the people, what country do they think of when they think flowers? They think Holland. Well, in Holland, most of the guys, they grow 3 types of plants, and that's it. I'm going to grow great hellebores because you're going to grow great daylilies, and you're going to grow great dianthus.
Yep.
And we're not going to get in each other's garden, because I'm really good at what I do. But the American model is the exact opposite. You need to be jack of all trades and hopefully master of some of them.
Yep. All right, we've got to go to break. We're going to expand on some of the discussion about plants versus marketing versus actually the quality of the plant. We'll be right back right after this.
Are you looking to reach an audience of over 12 million residents in the Philadelphia, Delaware Valley, and New York City Tri-State? Then consider becoming a broadcast sponsorship partner for Bloomers in the Garden. Every week on Bloomers in the Garden Radio, your products become associated with the authority in everything lawn, landscape, and garden. For more information on the Bloomers in the Garden Partnership Program, feel free to call the hotline 609-685-1880 or check out the radio tab at bloomers.com.
Dreaming of a gorgeous garden? Give your azaleas, rhododendron, blueberries, and evergreens a powerful boost with their #1 acid-loving plant food, Espoma Organic Hollytone. Polytone is a perfect blend of natural, long-lasting ingredients that nourish plants for stronger roots, faster growth, and bountiful blooms. Plus, it's easy to use and safe for people, pets, and planet. Visit espoma.com for a retailer near you and helpful gardening tips. Espoma, a natural in the garden since 1929.
If you're like me, then you absolutely love birds. The Bird Sanctuary at Bloomer's Home and Garden Center has you covered. They're dedicated to the care and feeding of wild birds of all sorts. Want to bring more birds to your yard? Then you got to see this place. Bloomers has a huge flock of feeders, birdhouses, birdseed, and much, much more. Want to feed the birds and not the squirrels? They have this absolutely cool bronze bird feeder that will drive those sneaky squirrels nuts. They'll be moving to the next door neighbor in no time. OMG. Bloomers have these absolutely adorable birdhouses that will turn your yard into the perfect bird B&B. They carry all types of wild bird seed, suet, seed cakes, and mealworms. Bloomer stocks Lyric, Coles, CNS, Pine Tree Farms, and much, much more that will keep those beautiful birds coming back for more. Bloomer's Home and Garden Center is located in Washington Township in Gloucester County. For more information and directions, check them out on the web at bloomers.com. Bloomer's Home and Garden Center, you got to see this place.
Welcome back to Bloomers in the Garden. Before the break, we were talking about growing proven winter plants, and that marketing has become such an emphasis on the plants that are presented to the public that they're it's branding basically, and that sometimes that plant is not the same. And I'd say most times where independent garden centers like Bloomers, like all of the others that are in your neighborhood, they're getting plants that are the best plants they can find, not buying by brand. A proven winner that's at Bloomers and grown by Centerton is going to be a superior plant than what you may find at your local box store. And that it's frustrating for me as a retailer to have to explain that to a customer because unfortunately independent garden centers automatically are expensive.
Yeah.
Automatically. It's like, well, can I show you their recent ad? Like our plants are, 20% less than what they're advertising for. So, but in any case, how do you deal with that as a grower?
So, as a grower, we're constantly trying to grow the best possible product, right? We're trying when we think about everything we do to a product, it's how can we make that end product better? Like every decision we make, what type of soil we're going to use, where are we going to grow our input from? What type of cutting are we going to take? What kind of fertilizer is it going to make the end product better or worse? That's all we put into it is how to make that end product great. And so when we talk about what makes our products better than another, it's a lot of things. It's a lot of care. It's a lot of time. It's a lot of dedication. But the biggest thing that we segregate when we're talking to consumers about why to shop at independent versus a box store, your box store is being bought regionally for the most part. There might be one person buying for 100 stores, 200 stores. Whereas your local independent garden center, not only are they buying for just them, but they're buying products that they know they're going to work well for you in your neighborhood.
Absolutely.
And so why wouldn't you go to a place where not only do they have the knowledge of how to grow in this area, but they're buying products specifically to work in this area. That's right. And so that's why I really like the concept of the neighborhood garden center so much more, because the product is going to be catered and selected from growers that are going to work best for both them and for you.
And you're strictly and fiercely and independent only.
Fiercely.
Right.
Fiercely. Maybe to a fault, but hey, that's the lane we've carved out for ourselves for 48 years.
We there's a lot of family garden centers that have basically gone under since COVID
Sure.
hit and such, and where there's many left, and that it's so important for us to be there so that we basically crown the products that are worth buying. You know, all of whether we know what control products are right to spray for individual issues. We know what works for your lawn. We know what plants work in the area. And we are we're the kingmakers. And then Depot, Lowe's, Walmart, whatever catch it. Well, they're selling a lot of this. So, and that they take over and really move it. But we're the ones that are basically sorting out what works and what doesn't, so we can give the consumer the right product. But Centerton Nursery has brands that help sort that out, even so I don't even have to. We've got the list. I mean, the perennials are, as far as the percentage of sales, perennials, shrubs, and now with Chef Jeff, what percentage of sales volume would you say?
It's 60-30-10, pretty much. So
Okay.
Perennials 60, shrubs 30, and edibles 10. Though that it's interesting that the shrub market was shrinking for a large number of years, and now it's starting to come back. It has come back a little bit since COVID. So it probably was closer to like a 65-28 and whatever the remainder is, Chef Jeff edibles. But that edibles market is still continuing to grow. You got to think 15 years ago, we didn't grow a single edible plant. And now it's more than a tenth of our sales.
And the varieties that you grow it's not like you have 100 different type varieties of tomatoes. You do have a great list, but it's sorted out for the dog. There's no dogs in the list.
I hope not.
No, there aren't. And it goes that way. Like I as a retailer, I can't find potatoes. You guys grow potatoes.
Yeah.
And it's those types of things that I really enjoy that you're willing to do. But for instance, if we went over hassle-free roses, but there's daylilies. You branded daylilies and created a reblooming daylily more than just Stella d'Oro.
Sure. Well, and you got to. So I would say we didn't create them, but we definitely laid a helping hand on it. But we were very involved with Dr. Daryl Lapps, who had bred the Happy Returns daylily, which is that lemon yellow daylily that blooms all summer long that you see in every shopping mall in most of North America. And he always said, if I would have made a nickel on every plant that was ever sold, I would have retired a millionaire at the age of 55. But he had been breeding that bloodline for a number of years, and he had some very interesting plants that were hideously ugly. And my dad became very good friends with him and said, you're really close to something really breakthrough. And he did, and he made a couple of color breaks. And so he said, look, we need to market this because people know Stella and they know Happy.
Right.
They don't know anything else. And if you shove another thing in there and just say, well, it's like Stella, but it's pink. No, you gotta package it. You gotta put it together, and that's where we came with a Happy Ever Appster brand of daylilies, which is still sell to this day, and they still continue to do well. Most of those plants are off patent now, but they still continue to do well in that package because people have come to associate that with long season color for daylilies.
Right, and most people, the average public, they think yellow, orange.
Yeah.
But you have, I guess it's wedding frosting or something for white frosting.
Royal frosting.
Royal frosting is white.
Yeah.
And that there's other colors beyond just your basic.
Yeah.
There's
The
true
orange and red
pinks.
one that grows on the side of the road. Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
There's more than that.
Exactly.
Who knew?
And that, oh my gosh, we get every spring. It's like, do you have tiger lilies? It's
Yeah.
like, what do you mean by a tiger lily?
Yes.
Like, can we be clear?
Yeah.
Some of the other things, Walk on the Wild Side, I've been doing a couple of projects at home, and that where I've been putting those in between the steps of patio blocks and things. And we had a show not too long ago where we talked about planting, thinking outside the box. Don't just, think hardscaping, landscaping, that they're all separate. And also we touched on Chef Jeff's. We're going to have to take a break, but we're going to talk about in the next segment about how broad your selection of plants has gotten from perennials to azaleas to now garlic. You can grow in things that are vegetables. Most people used to stay in their lane, whereas like the greenhouse growers did this, the nurseries did this, and the perennial guys did this. Not at Centerton. They do it all. We'll be right back to talk about that right after this. Hi, this is Len Schroeder from Bloomers in the Garden. Do you have a landscape, garden, or plant question? If so, call or text us using the Bloomers in the Garden hotline. Dial 609-685-1880. That's 609-685-1880. Don't be shy. We want to hear from you. Call or text us and let us know what problems you're facing. Let us know how we're doing. Call or text 609-685-1880. If we use your comment on the air, we'll send you a free Bloomers t-shirt. Call or text us at 609-685-1880. That's 609-685-1880. And we'll see you in the garden. Fertilome Succulent Potting Mix with EcoPeat is the perfect ready-to-use potting mix for all your succulents. Fertilome Succulent Potting Mix is a blend of sphagnum peat moss, perlite, and EcoPeat. EcoPeat is a natural wood fiber from peat bogs. When added to Fertilome peat moss, it produces a superior professional substrate with an exceptional ratio of air porosity and water holding capacity. Fertilome Succulent Potting Mix will ensure maximum drainage with ideal water retention. It's simply the best succulent mix on the market. Ask for Fertilome by name at your local garden center. Available at Daniel's Garden Center, Sumneytown Pike, Harleysville, Pennsylvania. Gasper's Home and Garden, 316 Tanyard Road, Richboro, PA. Your next houseplant is waiting for you in Bloomer's Home and Garden Center's greenhouse. Bloomers recognizes that houseplant choices are as important to your interior decorating as the fabric on your couch. The right plant, paired with the perfect container, can bring a dynamic change to your home. A houseplant brings life to your world and connects your home's interior to the greater outdoors. Even a small succulent placed on your coffee table has a way of connecting your living room to the Amazon rainforest. How about an air plant in your kitchen? Looking for an indoor flowering plant to add color to your plant palette? Bloomers has a large revolving assortment of flowering beauties. From aglaonemas to ZZ plants, Bloomers Greenhouse is stocked with your next favorite indoor plant. Bloomers carries a large selection of pottery and containers to match your home's decor and make any of your plants more beautiful. Bloomers experts can help you care for your plants and have the fertilizer, insecticides, leaf shine, and specialty soils you need to grow healthy and happy indoor plants. Visit Bloomers Home and Garden Center's greenhouse and make every room in your home a living room. Visit bloomers.com for more information. That's bloomers.com, and we'll see you in the garden.
Welcome back to Bloomers in the Garden. Well, here with Bobby. And Bobby, you know, as Len said, in the past, growers would stay in their lane. Nurseries grew woodies, greenhouses grew annual and vegetable seedlings and holiday crops, and perennial growers grew perennials and ground covers. Now, everybody's growing everything, and that looks like you're in that, don't you?
Well, yeah, a little bit, you know, so I'll rewind the clock 48 years.
That's all.
We had 17 SKUs. And they were all ericaceous plants. So Ericaceae is the Erica of heather family, but rhododendrons, mountain laurel, pieris, azaleas. That was it.
Made in New Jersey.
Yep, right? And my grandfather knew by April 15th if he was going to have a good year or a bad year. You know, and my grandmother could tell when he started saying, you know, you need to start spending less at the grocery store, right? Mm. April 15th, you were done, right? All your sales were done by April 15th. Ooh. And we realized as we grew that by diversifying a little bit might not be such a bad thing. And then my dad had the wherewithal saying, you know, we should probably start getting into some of these perennials. He thought perennials were going to be a big deal. This is in the early 80s. At the time, I think we maybe had 30 SKUs, and they were all woody shrubs. And so we realized that by diversifying our product, we were starting to stretch that sales season out a little bit. And so instead of doing 100% of our sales in 3 weeks, we now do 80% of our sales in 12. So it's still not great, but 47 years of really, really pulling that peak down into more of a hill, it helps. But I think that's what a lot of growers have found is that if you're growing in a monoculture type of situation where you're just doing one thing, even if you're doing it really well, our industry is basically built around one thing. weather on Saturdays and Sundays, right? You give me sunny weekends, April through June, and I'll give you a great year. Right. The problem is if your product's only there for 3 weeks, if you have 2 of those weeks that are rainy, guess what? You just killed your year. But by saying, we can get a little bit of this, a little bit of that, we can start shipping in March. Well, these still look good in July and August. We can stretch this thing out. And so the more successful growers have figured out that they cannot rely so much on these tentpole weekends. Mother's Day is huge. Memorial Day is huge. 4th of July, those tent poles are great, and they're always going to be there. But it's the rest of that area under the tent. The more that you lift that up, the more successful you'll be long term.
And the marketing part of it has been very smart. Autumn Editions just got delivered to Bloomers.
Yeah,
and it's specifically fall is for planting.
That's right.
You're going to hear all about that next week. But fall is for planting, and that where perennials put on the root growth in the fall season, and that we get the benefit of 2 rainy seasons. And it's a great time to plant, but everybody's looking for, what do you got for sale? What do you have 50% off? And my goal as a retailer is never to do that.
Yeah.
If I start doing that, then again, it's not a good thing. I have no reason to innovate, no reason to do anything new.
Yeah.
So, but from what you guys do, that you give me the tools to be able to do that. And the plant selections are beautiful.
Well, and Autumn Editions, and I'll give credit where credit's due. So he's unfortunately no longer with us, but a gentleman by the name of Greg Souls, he was working with Darwin Perennials. Mm-hmm. And Darwin was breeding a lot of perennials like this one that's right in front of us, right. That will bloom on without a cold period, without vernalization. Mm-hmm. And so you could start them in the winter and transplant them up in late spring and have them perfectly fresh and beautiful for summer sales. And they were breeding that for growers in the South that had shorter winters. And he had this concept of, you could really market these things for a whole nother turn of a perennial market. And he says the packaging has got to tell the story as to why you should be planting that stuff this year. And that's where Autumn Editions came from.
Yep. Look for them at a garden center near you. Go to your local garden center. If you don't see them, ask for them. And you'll be able to see them right away. They're in that orange pot.
Yeah.
And again, it's a whole marketing thing, and that I know that's your job.
Do you know why they ended up in the orange pot, not the blue?
They were sold out of the other color.
Well, no, because I think it was my sister was riding somewhere in late summer. She was making calls. I believe it was in Long Island, and it was one of our larger customers up there. And they said all blue pot perennials 25% off, right? And a lot of garden centers would do that. August 1st, they hadn't gone a shipment in a month. Things were looking tired. Maybe they trimmed them back. But all blue pot perennials on 25% off. For better or for worse, that's what they were doing. And we called around to a couple of our key accounts. They said, we do put some stuff on special. It's tired. We need to get rid of it. I'd rather sell it at a discount and break even with it than toss it out. Mm-hmm. And so I said, okay, we can't put it in a blue pot. It's got to be in a different color container. Yep. So you could say, blue pots are 25% off. This is in an orange pot. It's not it's full price. Yeah, right. And that's where the whole orange pot came from. We wanted something that would merchandise well with mums and pumpkins and corn stalks that are available in a garden center this time of year. And
that's brilliant. I just whispered to Julio, I think he's been to our place.
I've been to every garden center this side of the Mississippi. Yeah.
Right. Well, it does become hard to, because there's sometimes you got to clearance stuff.
Yeah,
and that's very smart.
But at the same time, bring in fresh material to give the consumer a reason to come back in the door.
That's exactly right. Mm-hmm. That's not because everything to a garden center is impulse.
Sure.
Look at that pretty lily. I'm gonna, I want to put that in. Look at that, and where in a week's time it's gone.
Yeah.
We talk about growing a perennial garden, and that we want you to grow a perennial garden to our listeners. Grow it the entire year. Don't try to plant it all at once. And that the Autumn Editions gives people reason to plant things when the fall, when it will naturally be in bloom as well. So it's just smart, and it's helping the consumer. All right, we have to take another break, and we're going to be right back in the garden right after this. Some of our most frequent questions revolve around organic container gardening for houseplants, annuals, and of course, vegetables. Coast of Maine's Bar Harbor Blend organic potting soil is a lightweight soil mixture made with salmon, blueberry, lobster, and other composts, as well as calcium and chitin-rich lobster shells, sphagnum peat, perlite, and kelp meal. It is a great soil. And Coast of Maine's Bar Harbor organic potting soil is rich in organic material, creating lush, disease-resistant plants that require less watering, less feeding. Its rich, dark brown color provides the perfect balance between water retention and drainage needed for healthy plants. Coast of Maine's Bar Harbor Blend organic potting soil is available at these local retailers: Barlow's, Seagirt, New Jersey; Espen Shades Garden Centers and Greenhouse, Monton, Pennsylvania; Ashcombs Farm and Greenhouse, Mechanicsburg, PA.
Dreaming of a gorgeous garden? Give your azaleas, rhododendron, blueberries, and evergreens a powerful boost with their #1 acid-loving plant food, Espoma Organic Hollytone. Hollytone is a perfect blend of natural, long-lasting ingredients that nourish plants for stronger roots, faster growth, and bountiful blooms. Plus, it's easy to use and safe for people, pets, and planet. Visit espoma.com for a retailer near you and helpful gardening tips. Espoma, a natural in the garden since 1929.
Are you looking to reach an audience of over 12 million residents in the Philadelphia, Delaware Valley, and New York City Tri-State? Then consider becoming a broadcast sponsorship partner for Bloomers in the Garden. Every week on Bloomers in the Garden Radio, your products become associated with the authority in everything lawn, landscape, and garden. For more information on the Bloomers in the Garden Partnership Program, feel free to call the hotline 609-685-1880 or check out the radio tab at bloomers.com.
Welcome back to Bloomers in the Garden. All right, I'm going to say it. Natives are weeds. So often those same plants are on the invasive species list, and I give credit to Dr. Armitage for coming up with the phrase nativars. You're speaking at a dealer days specifically about this topic.
Right.
Tell me about what Centerton's doing about natives, because there is a demand.
So the word native is it's not a 4-letter word in our industry, but it's a loaded word, and it means something different to every single gardener, grower, retailer. Depending on where you are in the country, it could mean different things.
Right.
There are municipalities in this country where they have basically required that you plant specifically these native species that are native to just this region, that you have to, if you remove any biomass from your property, you have to replace it with these specific species, right? And that's fine. And there's some ecological evidence that would support that, but to only have that is a huge mistake, right? And I know your desire. They're some of them are a little aggressive. Some of them don't have good shelf life. Some of them don't bloom very long. I get that. But there's what we're trying to promote is there is a place for all of these things. There's a place for native species. There's correct places to use them. There's also a place for native cultivars, the nativars. But there's also a great place for plants that didn't come here on their own. I'm kind of along the lines of I don't care where you come from. If we can get along, I'm okay with you. That goes for plants too.
I love the statement that you have about natives on your website. And I don't know if you're going to change this because of marketing, but just the point where it says, if we Americans had to eliminate non-natives, we'd have to get rid of cats, dogs, tomatoes, potatoes, Hondas, Toyotas, and most of us. Let's face it, we're citizens of the world community. Each nation has a lot of good citizens and a few bad ones. As far as we're concerned, all people and plants that mind their manners are welcome.
That's right.
That's
That's
awesome.
absolutely right. And, at the same time, we're promoting natives. And so I have to say that there's great places for them, but they're I don't want to say they're limited, but it's all about the right plant for the right spot, right? How do you make a gardener upset? Sell him an azalea and tell him to put it in the wettest part and the fullest sun in his garden and make him unhappy, right? It's the wrong plant for that spot. Natives have those places where they do well because they're originated in this area. There's certain soils and certain situations where they're going to outperform the non-native species, and that's fine. But your whole garden that way, no, that's a little extreme.
Yeah, I wanted to bring up you don't grow my favorite perennial, which is Lythrum.
Yes.
And Lythrum is like outlawed in Maryland, I think, or somewhere.
Maryland, Connecticut, New York, and Pennsylvania.
So New Jersey.
And Delaware, yes. Yeah.
So we're surrounded. Lithrum's a great plant. Oh,
Yeah,
it
so
reseeds that bad.
it does reseed. If you've ever traveled into the mountains of central Pennsylvania and New York this time of year, it's definitely reseeding. Is it beautiful? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. In fact, I spoke with a plant breeder friend of mine a couple of weeks ago, and he was asking what to work on. I said, give me a sterile Lythrum.
Yes.
Because that's so there is it's actually fairly poignant. There is an invasive species bill that's coming up in New Jersey's legislature. It'll probably be voted on sometime in this next session, and Lythrum's on that list. So we probably will join that group.
Okay.
But they are putting provisions in there to say if you can certify that the plant is sterile and you have the science to back it up, then it's okay to sell. And that's the way that a lot of this is going. It started on the West Coast because they have longer growing seasons, so they have a bit more issues with things reseeding than we do here on the East. But it's definitely something where there's a big push to say, you can't grow any of this stuff. It's got to be all native species. Right. And we're trying to find that happy lane where there's a place for all of this stuff. Even Lythrum, if you can find me a sterile variety.
Well, I remember first time I saw that Buddleia Black Knight was on the invasive species list. I was like, what?
Yeah, and I feel like that. Have I seen Buddleia Black Knight reseed? Yeah, once.
Yeah.
Once. We had one crop up on the farm, and we've grown tens of thousands of those over the course of the last almost 30 years of growing that plant. Now, if you go to Oregon, which again, it's a different soil,
right?
It's different seasons, different everything. Yep. Yeah, they're coming up like wildfire, and I get it, but you cannot. It's kind of like what we talked about with, are you buying for 300 stores? Or are you buying for your store, right? You know what works for your customer. Yeah. The same kind of goes for plants, right? When it comes to the things that are invasive. One of our top selling native plants is Onethera, right?
Right.
Onethera will walk 6 feet in a year. Yeah. If that's not aggressive for a plant, I don't know what is. But, in the prairie lands of the Midwest, it fills spaces. It's beautiful. It blooms for a long season, and it kind of minds its own business. You put that thing in the wrong soil, and it will take over your yard. And that's the case with pretty much even kudzu vine is native to somewhere.
Yeah,
that's
right.
So,
well, with some plants, it's like, let me give you a plant that's easy to grow and it can come back every year reliably, and it's going to flower and it's going to look beautiful. And we joke oftenly, it's like, I've got a yellow flower that it goes and it'll be nice and contained. It's got big leaves, and then at the end, it has like a little plume on top after the flower's done. It's a dandelion.
Yeah.
Well, somebody's going to figure that out and say, why don't we grow dandelions? Anyway. All right. We've got to take another break, and we'll be right back right after this. Hi, this is Len Schroeder from Bloomers in the Garden. Do you have a landscape, garden, or plant question? If so, call or text us using the Bloomers in the Garden hotline. Dial 609-685-1880. That's 609-685-1880. Don't be shy. We want to hear from you. Call or text us and let us know what problems you're facing. Let us know how we're doing. Call or text 609-685-1880. If we use your comment on the air, we'll send you a free Bloomers t-shirt. Call or text us at 609-685-1880. That's 609-685-1880. And we'll see you in the garden.
Is she gone?
Nope, she's still standing there.
What is she doing?
I think she's watching the grass grow.
That's our job.
I know, right? She's watching the grass grow, the flowers grow. Ooh, look, the trees are growing.
I can't say as I blame her. Remember where she bought all this stuff?
Duh, bought us there too.
Bloomers Home and Garden Center. Find us online at bloomers.com.
You're listening to Bloomers in the Garden Radio. Listen anytime through your favorite podcast provider, or see and hear us by subscribing to Bloomers YouTube channel. Bloomers in the Garden Radio is heard in Philadelphia and throughout the whole Delaware Valley every Saturday. First, wake up with us at 6 a.m. on WNWR The Word at 95.3 FM and 1540 AM. Tune in at 8 a.m. to Bloomers in the Garden Radio on Talk 860 WWDB. A rebroadcast of Bloomers in the Garden Radio is played each Saturday evening at 5 p.m. on The Word, 95.3 FM and 1540 AM. On Sunday at 8 a.m., we can be heard throughout the New York Tri-State Area on Classic Oldies, 1250 AM WMTR. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you in the garden. Me and Julio.
So,
Bobby, thank you so much for coming on. Again,
Appreciate
Bobby Blue is with us from Centerton Nursery, the vice president. Go out to your local garden center and look for the blue pots or the orange pots.
Or the orange pots.
That's right.
This time of year.
Again, one of the best nurseries in the country, one of our best quality suppliers. You can't go wrong. And look for Caterpillar candy.
Oh, yes.
We're going to just tease that. Centerton website is?
CentertonNursery.com.
There you go.
Nice and simple. Yeah. Bobby, thank you again.
Thank you, Bobby.
We're going to be right here in the garden next week at the same time. Please, if you have any gardening questions or have anything you want to ask Bobby, I'll get it to him. 609-685-1880 and just leave it. And make sure that you give us your name and your question, and we'll answer it as soon as possible.
Did you know you can listen to Bloomers in the Garden anytime? Search for us on your favorite podcasting platform or go to bloomers.com and visit the radio tab.
We'll see you in the garden.